Good afternoon to you,
Afternoon.
Neil. Thanks so much for joining us. Looking at the markets, it was a pretty short week last week with all the Eid celebrations coming through.
Yeah, correct. And unfortunately, as you would have guessed, it manifested itself in pretty low volumes and on the news front, both politically, economically, whatever you can name it. It was rather dull, actually, unfortunately, yeah.
Let's looking at Egypt, up 1.5%. What are some of the major drivers?
Well, look, the major news story in Egypt, which I think helped restore some international and local investor confidence, was the fact that it seems like the IMF and the government are reaching an agreement with the loan that the IMF is going to grant or has granted. They just sort of come into the final settlement details, etc., etc. The loan seems to be about $4.8 billion. So that was a major driving force behind the move higher. And then Steel, they also seem to have reached an agreement with the government. A while back, they acquired a license in Egypt, but they haven't paid for it. So government's obviously been pushing to pay for that, and it looks like they've kind of reached an agreement there with regards to the fee amount that they have to pay.
And if we look at Nigeria, it's been a market that's been quite depressed, despite all the positive results that have been coming through from the banking sector especially. Yeah. But we did have banks rallying in last week's trading session. Yeah,
good to see. I mean, banks were one of the solid performers last week, mainly driven by the likes of First Bank, one of the bigger banking stocks there. That was up 4.4%. The sector as a whole was up in excess over 0.5%, so that was good to see. A lot of companies reported results previously a couple of weeks back. We got Guaranteed Trust Bank and Access due to report sometime this week. So I think a lot of investors have kind of just positioned themselves ahead of those results. Volumes have been depressed, but we did see some foreign buying in these banking stocks towards the end of the week. We had some decent volumes actually in the bigger banking stocks. So
talking
that was good to
on results, so we did have Dangote Cement also rallying in last week's trading session, really on those positive results.
Yeah, look, they reported towards the end of the prior weeks, so volumes were very thin as and when they posted, but last week it looked rather good. I mean, you have to remember that Dangote Cement is 25% of the market cap in Nigeria, so it carries a large amount of weighting there, and it was up in excess of 2.5% last week. Management presentation with regards to the results that they had went quite well. Investors seem to like that, so we did see some foreign interest in the name.
In Kenya, some positivity last week, positivity coming through, also driven by a lot of results. We had some results from East African breweries, Samir Africa, and today Pan-African Insurance. Yeah,
look, those seemed pretty much okay. Those all right. Very flat in Kenya, unfortunately. I mean, it's up 0.3% on a week-on-week basis. Volumes were relatively low. We did see foreigners come in select names, the likes of East African breweries. Unfortunately, that closed the week lower, however, though, because, I mean, I think everyone was kind of expecting slightly, but nothing wrong with the results. It was just pretty much they didn't seem to overawe the people, and investors. So I think a lack of that factor, the X factor in the results, that we saw a bit of selling in the name.
Like I was saying to my broker a little earlier, we're just talking about the banking sector as well as the insurance sector in Kenya. It seems like the banking sector is favoured more than the insurance sector. What are your thoughts on the two?
I think it's mainly a liquidity issue, to be perfectly honest. If you look at your banking sector, you've got two of the biggest stocks on the stock exchange there. You've got Kenya Commercial Bank and Equity Bank. On a day-to-day basis, they trade one of the larger volumes when you compare it to your smaller insurance companies. So it's very tough to get in and out of these insurance stocks. I think that is the major driver behind, or at least one of the reasons behind the outperformance in these banking stocks. And you have to remember, insurance sector, the margins are very tight as well when looked at compared to the banking stocks.
And we've seen foreigners drawing back in Kenya. I mean, with their participation sitting around 39.4%, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, look, I think that's kind of a factor across the majority of the African markets. You've got to remember, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the end of their summer. I think a lot of the market participants are taking the end of their summer leave. So hopefully towards September, we'll see a lot more foreign participation in these markets.
So looking in Zimbabwe, we had the industrial index down almost to 2%, but when you look at the mining index, not much activity on that front.
No, absolutely dead there. I mean, there were one or two stocks that traded the entire week on extremely thin volume, so nothing, in fact, that you can read into the mining index. We saw select foreign participation in the likes of Econet and Delta, been pushing volumes there. But yeah, we've also seen some selling in some of the bigger names, unfortunately. Last week we saw some of the agricultural stocks come under a bit of pressure, but I think there was more of a factor of one or two funds getting out of the agricultural sector more than a fundamental reason. No news out in that sector. So interesting to see. I mean, the bigger names didn't get too badly hammered though, yeah.
I also spoke to a broker last week about Zimbabwe and the kind of results that we are seeing coming through from some of the companies, really posting some good results, but not really reflected on the market given what, in terms of the constitution and some of the regulations that are due to come through there.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see what comes out. I mean, we had ZANU-PF and MDC disputing the draft constitution once again, so it's supposed to come out relatively soon, but I mean, don't hold your breath. We'll have to wait and see as and when that comes out. With regards to results, yeah, look, I mean, Zimbabwe, I mean, there's a lot of foreign interest in Zimbabwe, and rightly so, but I think there's still a lot of ignorance associated with that market. When you see these political upheavals in Zimbabwe, I think you get the foreigners tend to panic a bit. So, which isn't the case. It has changed quite a lot in Zimbabwe, and things are a lot better. We've got a lot of people on the ground that are telling us it's a hell of a lot better. Yeah.
Another market which is under pressure. The SEMDEX doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but down in today's trading session, down in last week's trading session, down about 0.8%.
Yeah, it's been coming out of a hell of a lot of pressure this whole year. In fact, I think year to date it's down nearly 10%. So that's not too good to see. But as I said a couple of times on this show, in fact, it's the major trading partners are Europe, and still a lot of problems in Europe, and they haven't sorted themselves out. So once they sort themselves out, I think Mauritius will follow suit. So we just kind of have to wait there. Been a bit of pressure in your bigger stocks like Rogers, MCB. Interesting to note though that there has been a lot of activity over the last 2 trading sessions, today included, in Rogers. We saw some foreign selling in the counter. As to why, we're not quite sure. We're trying to find out, but yeah, so that's interesting to know.
And like you say, its biggest trading partner coming under pressure, Europe. We see that pressure coming through with the hoteliers down quite significantly
Absolutely, and that's just a factor of not enough tourist arrivals. We've seen tourist arrival numbers down on a year-to-date basis for quite a while in Mauritius, so that has to sort itself out before we can see a rally there.
Well, we've got a full week this week compared to what we had last week, so what kind of trade can we see coming through for some of these bourses?
Well, you just got to bear in mind that today was a bank holiday in the UK, so not too much activity going on in Africa, unfortunately, because a lot of the foreign participants would have been absent. But I mean, we've got quite a few news stories coming out, quite a few economic releases out, both in the UK and in the United States this week, with Ben Bernanke giving testimony a bit later in the week. So I think that's going to drive international volume, which will filter through to Africa, obviously. So hopefully it will pick up. I'm pretty sure it will. I mean, it can't get worse than last week with 2 trading days short, All
right, thank you so much, Neil. That was Neil Barnard. He's a trader at Securities Africa.